Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
You are listening to the financialsurvivalnetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1230 WBZT. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, well, it's about to now. Syria going to war. This man thinks it's going to happen any day now. Welcome back, Andy Hoffman.
Thanks for having me. I guess it was a nice weekend, but we're in September now, and there's just a laundry list of terrible things that I expect to happen. Is too long to go over in just one podcast, so we'll do our best.
All right, let's do our best. And what's up?
Okay, well, I'd say, yes, we'll start with Syria since it's the most newsworthy, but then I want to get into a million other things. The fact is, when Obama came out this weekend and said, I'm going to let Congress decide on this, and everyone's going, wow, he's taking some risk because, the Republicans will go against what he did. He wasn't taking a risk. He knew very well that he had his, quote, proof, at least proof enough to get the one-party fascist Congress we have to all work together, as they always do, on the wrong things. And, today Boner came out and said, I support war completely, and so we're going to war. And right now we have only one partner, the pathetic French. And whether we go this week, next week, 2 weeks, we're going. I mean, we've proven to the world, the UN's even saying we kind of agree to, that there was a chemical attack. No one knows exactly what happened or who did it or if it was even Assad that did it. But we want to go because this is the last-ditch effort of a dying empire to just find some way to stay in power. And I predict that it's going to be worse than Iraq manyfold.
So you're convinced it's a fait accompli, there's nothing that can stop it?
It was a fait accompli last year. It's really Iran is the bigger name. Look, Israel's out there today testing missiles and threatening to take out Assad, but you know very well that the newly elected Netanyahu's red line in Iran hasn't changed any. And, something's going to happen terrible over there. I'm not going to prognosticate about what or when, but it's going to happen. And boy, look at that oil price just surge higher every day.
Yeah, it certainly is. What's it up to today, Ant?
108.70.
108.70. And that's good for business, right?
Yeah, it's good for the military contractors. It's good for the oil companies. It's bad for everyone else. There's just so many bad ramifications of what's going on. I just read this weekend that U.S. Vehicle miles are down 10% over the last few years. People are not driving. They don't have jobs, and they can't afford to go anywhere. And so when you see today, they put up one of these diffusion indexes that says the economy is expanding. It's all bull, as I always said. Anytime you see a diffusion index, it's a big, giant lie. And by the way, the employment component fell. Just like the diffusion index in Europe said manufacturing was 51. It's barely positive, except if you look at the employment component, it dropped across every country in the entire Eurozone, and employment was at its lowest level of all time in August, and you can bet it's going to be lower in September too. So any number that's a diffusion index, you ignore it completely. Remember, China just came out, 3 weeks ago, and put their own disclaimer saying we can't, like the COMEX did, we can't confirm that the data we're putting out is true. So why is anyone looking at it? They're not. The only people looking at it are the PPT, who anytime a number comes out with a 5 in front of it, they buy stock futures and have the MSM right that the economy is expanding. It's at the point where it's a joke, and we'll get to my piece in a second, which I wrote today called the most important article I've ever written, I should say, about what's happening to the common man around the world. So we'll get there in just a second, I'm sure.
Yeah, so, but on more important matters, Apple has an important announcement they're going to be making about the next iPhone on September 10th. So there is some good news in the world, right?
Well, sadly, in America, that's what people care about. People can't even afford iPhones anymore. Remember, iPhone and iPhone demand has been going down. That's why the stock is down almost 50% from its highs. So as much as everyone's enamored by how exciting the Apple is, people are getting bored of it and they can't afford it anymore. In fact, I've got my Samsung Galaxy S3 a year ago, like in October, November, and I had to pay $200 or $300. And now I'm seeing they're doing no money down things for the iPhones and the Samsungs because no one can afford them anymore because we're in a massive recession that's getting worse every day.
I would substitute the R with a D, and I think that's more accurate. And thank goodness for easy credit. But now with the tapering, which they're going to taper something, and look at the housing numbers.
They're not going to taper anything. They're not tapering anything. I mean, yeah, the interest rates are surging today. They got to exactly 2.9% before the Fed turbo Q'd them down to 2.86. But the fact is that it's a complete and utter collapse of the economy right now. And what's going on with Syria and the oil price is only going to make things worse, and let alone what's going to go on in Europe now that they come back from vacation. And the G20 and all that, there will be no tapering. There won't even be a chance. If they even were stupid enough to make a comment at the September 18th meeting about tapering, the markets will go into free fall, starting with the bond market. So, and look, they can do whatever they want. They can taper, they can not taper. The fact is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether the deficit's going down because of a collapsing economy, because of higher interest rates. The deficits are going to explode, and of course, we have our debt ceiling debates. Oh yeah, that's right. We are exhausting all of the extraordinary options in the next few weeks, and we're going to have to go through that whole debt ceiling thing. And my prediction right here: no debt ceiling increase, just no debt ceiling at all. They are going to completely eliminate it. I wrote a piece called "Debt Ceiling to Infinity" last year as the ultimate hyperinflationary announcement, and that's what I believe will be happening sometime in October.
I'm inclined to agree with you on that. It's just become way too inconvenient. It gets in the way of all the fun they like to have, and who the heck needs it anyway?
Well, they have fun as long as the interest rates stay low and there's confidence in the currency. But look at the interest rates right now, and look at the confidence in America in general. And if we go in alone bombing Syria, and who knows what that's going to... I mean, you've seen the Chinese and the Russians literally warning us, don't you dare. And we're going to do it anyway. Heck, even England wasn't going along with us. This is us all along. The confidence, any confidence that's left in the United States will be gone forever once we do this, and we're doing it.
Yeah, you're pretty convinced, huh?
They're telling you we're doing it. The Congress said it today. Obama said it. We're doing it.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. I think it's a big, big mistake.
But it's, they know it's a big mistake from the long-term picture, but they also know that if they don't do this, they'll have nothing to fall back on from a political point. They need dumb people looking at iPhones to rally behind the patriotism. It won't happen, of course, but that's the only hope they have. They can't just let the economy fall apart without doing nothing. So this is what they're going to do. And it may well end up in martial law. It'll certainly end up in a lot of dead bodies, and it'll end up in a collapsing currency. But it's again, if they do this, maybe they can stay in power a little longer. If they do nothing, let alone if they taper, LOL, everything will fall apart this fall. And it probably will anyway.
So you think this is the end game finally, huh?
Well, I'm not saying Syria itself is the end game. I'm saying we're at the point, and I want to bring up my article now, the most important article I've ever written, which came out just an hour ago. Okay, I looked up every currency in the world, aside from the Chinese yuan, which really doesn't count because it's pegged to the dollar in the first place. And I had something like 70% of all the world's population, all those countries involved. Do you know that every single currency in the world is down against the dollar over the past 6 months and 2 years, except the Ugandan shilling, which is barely up, okay? Yeah. And that's because the more that the Fed prints, the more that it exports inflation around the world, having the world's reserve currency, to the point where no matter what happens, that inflation goes everywhere. And that's why you're seeing civil unrest around the world, like in Egypt, like in Brazil. And the countries, by the way, that have the most civil unrest are the ones, as I wrote in my piece, Inflation and Arab Spring, that use the highest percentage of their incomes on food. And number one in the world is Cameroon in Africa, which, by the way, I went to. Not a great place. But right after it comes India, Brazil, Turkey, South Africa, and Indonesia, who they are now calling, and it'll be my piece tomorrow, the Fragile Five. These are the new pigs of the world because their currencies are down 17% on average in the last 6 months against the dollar and 31% in the last 2 years. We are talking about massive food inflation among the world's most populated countries. And look what happened in Egypt, and think what's going to happen in all these other places ASAP, especially if we go to war and take the oil price up to who knows what.
Yeah, I think you're onto something here.
Darn right on something. And, this is what we have been talking about forever. This is what Miles Franklin talks about. This is what you talk about. People don't want to believe it, and they don't want to listen to it. But, the proof's in the pudding. Anyone who believes there's a recovery in the economy by now is, pardon my French, a moron. There's never been a recovery at all, other than a couple of diffusion indexes made up by the government. And, the new, as I call it, the new employment paradigm, where they make up employment numbers and they count part-time jobs. And did you realize that there were fast food workers in 60 nations, in 60 cities today, this weekend, that went on strike because they want not higher wages, they want double the wages.
Yeah, they want 15 an hour.
Yeah, and on top of that, McDonald's and all these guys are having the same thing as Walmart, the Obamacare effect. They will not hire full-time workers anymore with Obamacare coming.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. They want $15 an hour. And, like at that rate, actually doing a segment on this, I'm giving it away a little bit. But what they wanted, they've got a machine out there that flips burgers that can make 360 hamburgers an hour, which is kind of cool because I don't think a person can do that many. So no. They basically can get rid of like 2 or 3 employees per franchise. The machine pays for itself in a year or a year and a half. So the only reason they haven't put it in yet in the franchise is because obviously bad PR, right? It's like, oh, you're getting rid of these poor inner city youths and your utes and you're putting in machines. You're just doing that for the almighty dollar. You don't care about anyone or anything, blah, blah. You know the drill. And
someone was telling me before about how, well, they should do it because it's, you need to help the community. But the point is, remember, 70% of all the new jobs in this country, if you can even call them, quote, jobs, because they're not full-time jobs, they're half jobs, are part-time jobs. Mm-hmm. Most of the minimum wage in industries like retail and fast food, which is funny because with the economy, people aren't spending on fast food. They're not even driving. So I don't even believe this BS about how there's all these new McDonald's jobs. But okay, granted, you have population growth. The fact is, there's such intense competition for these jobs that they're lesser and less hours. So if you used to get 30 hours, now you might get a job, but you get 20 hours.
Of course.
And there's not a chance to ever be full-time unless you're like one of the handful of lottery winners that get to be the middle manager. So the fact is, there are no jobs out there. You may be able to make a handful of bucks, but it won't pay for anything. People need $15 an hour to pay their bills. And now that the government is printing money like it's going out of style, and the oil price they're pushing up, et cetera, they're going to need even more, but get even less. So how do you think that that's going to come about, that money? It's going to be printed and put into entitlement programs. And if they can't hold the lid on QE and keep interest rates down, then the whole country is going to collapse because interest rates are going to soar, and there'll be no confidence in the dollar, and it will collapse.
Yep, exactly. So I want to talk more about this up next on the FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz with Andy Hoffman talking about the most important article he ever wrote, and then I think he read it afterwards, 1230 WBZT. Hi, it's Kerry Lutz. I recently decided to move my retirement account into physical precious metals to hedge against the coming times. If you want to move an existing retirement account into physical precious metals that you can hold in your hand, tax-free, there's no company that can do it more quickly and efficiently than Regal Assets. It took them just 24 hours to open my new IRA account, and all I had to do was fill out one simple form. The best part is that Regal Assets does all the work for you. They cover the setup and administrative costs for 2013. If you're interested in making the same move I did, call 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620. That's 855-678-6620, or visit them at regalassets.com. You'll be glad you did, and tell them Kerry sent you. We're back.
on the financialsurvivalnetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz with Andrew Hoffman, 1230 WBZT. So, Andy, we got this collapsing economy. Are we going Mad Max here? That's what I want to know. Do I go stock up on ammo if I can find any in Walmart around the corner? Do I order it? What do I do here? I mean, that's really the question. What do you do to protect yourself, your family, what little bit of wealth you might have left?
Well, contrary to what some people might think, I am as far from a quote as you get. I certainly stock up. I got my food, I got my ammo, I got my gold, I got my guns, I got all that stuff. But I am far from the, in my protection continuums, I call it. I'm not a 10 where I go to a desert island and bury my gold in the sand and forage. I'm probably a C. But the average person, probably a 1, just sitting with their money in Citibank and in the urban areas waiting to get killed. And I don't know what'll happen. Will it become Mad Max? I mean, you look at history, certainly a good chance of it happening, especially when you talk about the country who's had the highest standard of living likely to come down the furthest of any country in the world. And we're already in bad economic shape, and half the nation already in the government for entitlements, which may not be coming once the dollar collapses. So, yeah, it could happen. But I don't know if it will. I just know that you prepare for it to happen and hope it doesn't. So what? So you have some rations of food, some MRE rations that you can use in the future or not use, and be happy that the world doesn't fall apart. But you have to prepare for bad things to happen. You have to make sure that you don't sit with all your money in debt collapse, that you rely on rushing to Costco the day that everything falls apart, hoping that there's still food there. You have to be ready. And look, it just happened to Hurricane, what was the one that came through?
Sandy. Hurricane Sandy, sure.
Yeah, and that was just for a 1 or 2 day thing. What if it happens for 3 or 4 months and you didn't prepare? Well, I'm telling you, if you don't prepare, you're going to be one of the many people that doesn't get to eat.
Yep. And as long as you bring up Prepare, one of our sponsors is preparewise.com. What I recommend is their mega pack. I think it's 183 meals. The stuff, Andy, actually tastes pretty decent. I think it's about $250 for 183 meals. Their fettuccine Alfredo, it's all GMO free, no chemicals, nothing. Preparewise.com. Use the discount code Liberty or Lutz. Either one works fine. You get a good discount, free shipping if the order is big enough, and just get some of this stuff. Even if there's a hurricane, you want to have food, you want to have water. Get some guns and ammo, G&A, guns, gold, and God. That's what's going to get you through this stuff, Andy.
Yeah, and you don't even need to even get the higher price rations. I mean, they're great, like what you're talking about. But you could simply buy rice in big bags at Costco, buy a Homer bucket from Home Depot, buy the Gamma seal lids. You can get them online for $7 each. Completely seal it so there's no air gets in, and you store your rice and your beans and your beans in there, and and you'll have something. Or you can get, like you said, freeze-dried rations, all that stuff, but get something, for God's sakes.
You gotta do something. If you don't have a lot of money, buy some rolls of pre-65 silver coins.
Of course.
Do something here. Don't just be a target. Don't just wait. And while we're talking, Andy, gold's up $18.30 the ounce. Silver was the big performer today, 85 cents the ounce. It's heading up towards 25. To me, Andy, 25 is a seminal, really key technical number because it's halfway to 50.
The cartel loves their very key. I got all things on my very key round numbers, and the fact is $25. You look at Steve St. Angelo of SRS Rocco report. He just put out his final piece showing that the break even for the top 12 silver miners in the world was $25 last quarter. Not all of them. Some of them were way below that. And anyone under 25, the top 12 certainly has a cost of production higher than 25. They need to make profits. So silver has to be over $30 an ounce just for the industry to not collapse.
Yep.
And it already is doing that anyway.
Yeah, it's already collapsed.
Yeah.
It's already.
And if it doesn't get over 30 quickly, again, you heard my prediction. I think that production 5 years from now of gold and silver will be 15+% less than they are today. And there'll be many people, I'm sure, very respected people who will agree with me on that. They simply have destroyed the industry in their quest to keep prices down just a little longer, to kick the can. I don't know, prepare for this war and, get through the elections, because the mining industry is so dead and buried, I can't even tell you. And once the price does take off and people start thinking of it in monetary terms, every one of those mines is going to be nationalized by the government of all the nations. And anyone who thinks, sorry, Jim Sinclair, anyone who thinks the governments are not going to do that when currencies are collapsing and mines and gold and silver are the only things considered money, is just going to lose their money. It's that simple.
Yeah, there's really no other way it can go. I mean, rights are going out the window as we speak, and that is an irreversible trend until the Great Revolution comes, whenever that might be. And I'm not overly optimistic on that one, Andy, like you know that.
I'm not either. And again, it's one of these things, there are a lot of people who are into the freedom movement, and we need to
we both
get America back. But you know what? You can't make a difference, not against these monsters with the guns, the sociopaths. Forget. Everything's going to fall apart. You have to rise from the ashes. You don't just fix something that's unfixable. It has to break first completely, and then you start over. And that's why we prepare for that transition period, as Bill Holter called it, because eventually we will rise from the ashes in some way, shape, or form. Then you can worry about the freedom movement. Right now, worry about yourself.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself. And you just need to concentrate on self-preservation first, worry about the rest of it later, because really, if you don't make it through this point, the rest of it ain't going to matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you just survey the wreckage here and getting into this thing, and it's just absurd that we got to this point. It was so unnecessary. But now that we're here, just fend for yourself, try to help those that you care about around you, get through this, because you see what's happening. They don't have a clue. They really don't know. They don't know what is in store for them, but you do.
Well, it may be unnecessary, but recall, there have been 599 fiat currencies, and everyone has had the exact same result. So it's not like the people in charge, they could have done things right if they just made decisions. The decision to go off of the gold standard in 1971, and for the entire world at the same time to let us renege, go off the gold standard, is what has destroyed the world. Well, and just like all the other fiat currency standards, this one will completely collapse. Again, then we can rise from the ashes in whatever way, shape, or form that be.
Yeah, Charles de Gaulle, God rest his soul, he really did his best to try to stop it from happening. Like nationalist, we all thought he was out to get the U.S. I mean, my father was angry about it, but he really had a higher purpose in mind. He was trying to get the U.S. to wise up, to see the evil of its ways. And of course, the propaganda masters said, no, he's anti-U.S., he hates us, and quite the contrary. He was trying to save us from ourselves, and we just didn't want to see the truth. And
not too many politicians get to power who understand economics, because that's not how you become a politician. You need the printing presses.
Yeah, but
Paul was one. Charles de Gaulle was another.
He made that speech, I don't know if you remember, in the 60s, a wonderful speech about the gold standard and about what happens when you ignore it at your peril. And, I've watched it several times, even though there's a lot of things I don't like about the French. A lot of things I do. I like croissants. I like French cooking. I love French wine. Too much. And too much for my waistline. But, this guy knew what was happening. He knew history, and he tried to warn us, and we didn't listen. And that's why we are where we are today. So you need to keep that in mind. Andy, milesfranklin.com. Make sure you read his piece today, because it is the most important thing that he ever wrote and read. And Andy, we'll talk to you next. we will try to talk to you next week. I'm going to be up in New York for most of the week, getting my house ready for sale, transfer, and my last remaining physical connection to New York. My kids, of course, will be there. And hey, as always, a pleasure, Ant.
Same here.
You be well.
You too.
Our friend Tom Dyson at the Palm Beach Letter is giving away free copies of a really cool report he put together called How to Protect Yourself from America's New Secret Police. Inside, you'll learn all sorts of simple, everyday tricks you can use to make yourself a little less visible and vulnerable to scammers, hackers, and even the federal government. For instance, inside Tom's report, you'll learn which free internet email service never to use. This company doesn't care if your account gets hacked or not. Or things the government must tell you if they request your social security number. And how to spot skimmers lying in wait on ATMs and gas pumps, and much, much more. These tricks and secrets are low-hanging fruit ideas. You don't have to invest time or much money into them. Most are free. But by taking some basic measures, you can make your privacy much harder to invade than your neighbors. Tom's report is available for a limited time to listeners who take a trial subscription to his newsletter. Just visit the Financial Survival Network homepage for more information, or go to www.palmbeachletter2.com. That's www.palmbeachletter2.com.
The Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.